Sessions. My name is Ebony Harris.
And I'm Eliza and we are two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides
of the couch. Welcome back. We keep trying this distance podcast every week. Every week we try something new. Like, let's see if this works. So we found a new system and it's working.
I love it. I'm so excited.
Awesome. So today we are going to be chatting about dope stuff therapists say, which is pretty much most of the social media, right? Most of Instagram is like these amazing quotes that Elisa comes up with that most people can resonate with, and or either as a therapist, like, yep, definitely tell my clients that, or as a client that's like needing to hear that, or it's just a layperson that's like, oh, if I was in therapy, that would be cool if my therapist actually said that to me, because that sounds like that would be helpful.
Right. Yeah, it's usually fun to see what the reactions are from people, and kind of like where it just sort of evolved from was, my own therapy, like something, I may have heard in therapy, or just sometimes stuff that just comes up, so it's a fun way to get messages out there. And like I said, it seems to resonate a lot with people. So, we figured we would just go over maybe like some of the top 3 popular ones of these different that seem to resonate with people, and talk a little bit more about it from the therapist point of view and from the client point of view. But
right. And I think it's interesting because even when, because I know I've sent you some stuff and been like, hey, make this into a quote, because even sometimes you're in therapy, your therapist are telling you things and you hear it a certain way, and that's not really maybe what their intention was or whatever. And so I think that sometimes even the quotes that are on the social media connect to like, oh, maybe that's what my therapist is trying to say, because that's not necessarily what I heard in the moment, because I'm still in my stuff, and it might not have presented itself in that way. And so I think it is cool that if you read some of those, kind of when you kind of recognize or identify, like, oh, this is something that maybe someone has tried to tell me in the past, but it just didn't hit me as hard, or as wasn't as impactful as it is when we do the quotes. So
right. And just to also give you some insight as to, this is some of what you could be gaining, like one-on-one, if you go to therapy, if you have a therapist. That's really our mission, is to connect people with therapists, with Black and brown therapists, with Black and Latinx therapists who we can relate to, bringing the two together. So I think it's just a great way for people to also have some insight as to what happens in therapy. So
right. I agree.
Go ahead. You was about to say something, and
I was just going to say, yes, I definitely agree. And I think it just like a reintroduction. I know we've been doing this for a while, but we always have new listeners and new people that come on. Melanin Mental Health, which is the company that we have, Between Sessions podcast, is just a part of Melanin Mental Health, but that's what it's all about. It's all about, like our tagline says, like, we're trying to get more people in therapy of color, and then connecting people with therapists of color. And so we understand that there are a lot of reasons why people hesitate to seek therapy. There are a lot of reasons why people, may just be taking their time and not sure if this is the right fit for them. And so we're trying to make therapy a lot more attainable, a lot more accessible, and for people to understand that therapy is dope and it can be a part of your routine, just like everything else that you do to take care of yourself, just like going to doctor's appointments, just like exercising. It's important that you recognize that therapy and or mental health is a huge part of who you are and you thriving in life, as opposed to just living. So.
Right. I saw a great quote this morning on, we talk a lot about self-care, and it said, self-care, it's not just the bubble baths and, the spa, and I'm kind of butchering the quote, but essentially like self-care is when you do the things so that you can have a life you don't want to run away from. And sometimes includes the things that you don't want to do.
Right.
Right.
Like, when you do those things, it makes life easier. Yeah. Definitely. So you said you wanted to look at the top 3?
Yeah, let's do the top 3. And I'm just going by, what Instagram says.
The people, what the people say. So this is based on the number of people that like these quotes and share these quotes and all those things.
Yeah, the first one is, one of the more recent ones we did this month, and that was dope stuff my therapist says. If trauma can be passed down throughout generations, then so can healing. That's what, right? Because we hear a lot about how, trauma is they're doing more and more research where it's not just stored in your body, right? It's in DNA, right? Yeah. And so when we think about our lineage and what our people have gone through, what our ancestors have gone through, and you don't even have to go that far back.
Right.
Then if the trauma that they went through, right, is in our DNA, right? So we're not only working through our own shit, right? We're also experiencing this collective pain. And so if that's true, right, so then what that means that our healing, right? Like the work that you're doing when you go to therapy, when you opt to heal some of this current and past day trauma or trauma from your lineage, that means that healing that you're doing, you're going to be able to pass that on to your ancestors.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Or future generations.
Ancestor, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah. I think it probably resonated with people so much is because we hear like you said, that's just become like a new thing, this whole like trauma being passed down generation by generation. And we hear a lot about like the bad that's happened and how it impacts us and all these different things from, slavery, systematic racism, immigration, all these things that are impacting the people that have brought us this far, right? Our past generations. We talk a lot about that and how that impacts who we are today. But I think what that post was a little bit more hope into like, you can now impact people after you, and I think it's interesting, even though the post was about healing future generations and that being passed down, how many people talked about how their own healing then impacted older generations. Right. And how when they started to get the help and when generations, the people that parents, grandparents started to see what they were working on and how it was impacting their life, that they became a little bit more interested in their own healing. So yes, it can help impact future generations, but it also helps other people, older generations, to see like, oh, okay, so this isn't this taboo thing that's not for us. This isn't something where we have to share the family secrets and it can become a whole big thing. It's something that really can impact you positively and then impact the people around you positively as well.
That's so true, because you begin to model it, right? Yeah. And that's part of why, for our elders, that sometimes it's difficult, is because it wasn't seen as a possibility for them. And it probably wasn't a possibility.
Right.
When you're going through these situations, you are in survival mode. Mm-hmm. You're not worrying about, what emotion am I feeling today, when you're just trying to get through your day to day. Like you're just trying to ensure safety, shelter, all of those things, just the basics, the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a possibility for them. There was no time, or there wasn't the ability to, now I'm going to take this time to go and heal, maybe.
Yeah.
It's so difficult for them to see it, and they can only take us so far, as far as their vision is limited to, right? Doesn't mean that they don't want it for us, but it's like sometimes they don't know how to go about it.
Yeah, and that happens a lot when you're even talking about your healing or anything, just anything in general. If someone hasn't either I don't want to say went through it, but it hasn't, like you said, kind of taken their healing that far, and or if they can't necessarily envision it, then they may not give you the information that you need for your journey. And so sometimes we look at it like people are being so negative and they don't want to support or whatever. And it's more like, no, it's not about that. It's just that their vision is what they've seen and what they've experienced. And so for you to now say like, oh no, but I can go 10 steps further, they can't even imagine that. But guess what? When you go ahead and do it and then go 10 steps further, then it encourages them to be like, oh, well, maybe I can too. So I think we have to stop taking it so personally when people aren't necessarily rooting for us on our own journeys, and recognize that they just may not see it. And then when they do see it, it'll help them kind of move forward as well.
That's part of the healing process, I think, too, because we do have to take into consideration how all of these different parts of us intersect, like so socioeconomic status, gender, culture, how all of these different parts of us, I don't want to say that healing is a luxury per se,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it was seen as a luxury.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like when I'm just trying to survive, what are you talking about, this healing stuff? And
Right.
so I think it's what you said. We can't take it personal, although it is difficult. It's hard not to take
Yeah.
it personal.
Yeah.
And I know even from my own experience, that was part of my healing, and in that you begin to reparent yourself, or you begin to
Mm-hmm.
look up for yourself in these ways. And part of it wasn't that, the people around you don't want the best for you. Sometimes they just don't see it as a possibility. They don't
Right.
know. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to go to Facebook real quick because we have a few comments. Someone's tuning in from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Hey,
Hey.
girl. And Zania says that right away when this one was posted, she reposted it immediately. And then Kendra was saying that, she says, my mom is 92. When I went to therapy, she was against it. She didn't believe in it. She told me to just pray. I went anyway, and it was just what I needed.
Yeah.
And again, it's sometimes those limitations. And I like to think, though, also a lot of the times they want the best for us. And then once we kind of have to do that for ourselves, it's like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you to show them, like, this is what that looks like.
Right. And I think what you said about reparenting yourself is extremely important, because the initial part, right, of trauma being passed down, it can kind of feel like, oh, it's their fault, right? Or, our parents did this to us, or we have these experiences, and not to, invalidate any experiences that you had with your parents or whatever lessons they taught you. But again, they did the best that they could. And so then if they hand you the baton, do you just stand there, or do you keep running, right? So they gave you what they could, and then it's up to you to continue your healing and your growth. And so I just think that it's huge to kind of, it's huge, and it's scary to be like, okay, maybe this is what I got from my parents, and maybe all of it wasn't good. Maybe, I know I talk a lot about like my thoughts on relationships, sex, money, all of those things, and how my parents' beliefs impacted me on that. So maybe it wasn't always in my best interest. It's just, this is what they knew. And so then at some point I have to then decide, okay, that's what they knew. It's not their fault. I mean, it's not like I need to blame them because of whatever situations I find myself in. At that point, when I'm like, okay, this is what they taught me, this is where it came from. Okay, now how do I change my thought process to best benefit myself? How do I work on my mindset and shift that? So then they can now, I don't know, I keep going back to that because I do feel like as much as our parents were an example to us, we can also be an example to them. And so we need to take that responsibility. Yeah.
Absolutely. As a mother, I know that I learned so much from my own kids, and they're still young,
Mm-hmm.
so absolutely it's a relationship, and
Mm-hmm.
I think to your point is that that's also why this is so difficult. A lot of times is because you are undoing this long lasting programming, right? Like, ooh.
It was a silent sneeze.
You're doing this healing of years and years and years, generations of thinking a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it's also often so difficult. But that's
right.
When, what that last part said, like, that's what you're doing, right? Like you're breaking that pattern, you're breaking that cycle. And so now generations that are going to come after you, there's other possibilities, right? Like now like you can't say, I don't know what that looks like, because I do know what that looks like. This is how it was modeled in
right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see what the next most popular one. Okay, so dope stuff. My therapist says not being triggered is not the same as being healed. Avoiding triggers pacifies our pain. Addressing the triggers heals our pain. Oh, that's a good one.
Pat myself on the back. That's funny. That is funny. That's true. It's I think sometimes we get into the place where it's kind of like, oh, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good, but that's because you're just avoiding everything that causes you any issues.
Mhm. Real quick, because this trial practice is going to end in 10 minutes.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Did not see that. Okay. So, yeah, I think a lot of the times we might hear people say, or we have said, like, I don't even think about it. Like, I'm not worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to ask ourselves, is that because you're avoiding it? Is that because
Right.
you're avoiding a relationship, avoiding a situation, avoiding the emotions?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it because you've actually worked through it? And
Yeah.
so did you experience the emotions? Did you have the tough conversations? Did you grieve? Did you go through it, or are you avoiding it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's, yeah, definitely, because we spend a lot of time, well, not everybody, but some of us, me, spend a lot of time compartmentalizing, right? So like if I have this going on, I'm going to put this in this little box over here, and I'm not going to necessarily deal with that. I'm not, because I have to keep moving over here, whatever the case may be. So definitely, and then when we do get triggered, we're so confused as to why it became this big thing, because it's like, oh, I thought I was good. I thought I was over it. But like you said, like there's a big difference between I'm addressing it head on. I'm going to deal with these emotions and these things that come up, and then I'm going to be able to heal myself and move forward with that. And it's a process. And like you say all the time, it's not pretty. Like, it's messy. And so going through that process and really dealing with it head on means that I'm going to have days where this sucks, and it's going to be a long time of me continuing to get triggered until I kind of figure out, okay, this is the trigger. This is how I kind of, understand my triggers. This is how I heal from my triggers. This is how I no longer let those triggers impact me in the same way. Not that they're not there anymore. It's just that as you build that awareness and as you build those skills to kind of address them, then you can see it coming, right? You can be like, oh, that's why I felt that way. That's why my heart started beating. That's why I got so upset. That's because of the trigger and not necessarily because of the situation. So definitely, you just putting it to the side or avoiding it is not the same as healing it.
Right.
Just because you don't feel like, oh, I haven't been triggered in a month, but I also haven't been down that street where my friend died or whatever the case may be for a month. That makes a difference, So
Right.
yeah.
And it's a fine line between caring for yourself, doing that self-care, and doing the healing. And sometimes you need a break from the healing,
Yeah.
but I think you can put it on hold forever, but it doesn't go away. It just accumulates. Okay. Last one. Let's see. What if your anger is the only way your grief feels safe enough to express itself?
I love that, mainly because I like talking about anger a lot, because I feel like so many conversations, not because I'm an angry person or anything. No, but I feel like so many conversations about anger is like, you shouldn't have it.
Right.
Like it definitely feels like anger is bad, and so you should not express it. You shouldn't have it. You need to get past it.
Mm-hmm.
But to validate anger as a legitimate emotion, just like every other emotion, anytime people do that, like, I just think that's amazing.
Right. And we had Brittany on last week, Brittany Oliver, talking about grief.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of the point also with this quote is that sometimes we don't realize we're grieving something, and sometimes anger is our go-to, or it's where we feel the safest,
Mm-hmm.
because there's this false sense of power. Like,
right.
if I'm angry, I'm loud, then I feel empowered. It's when we're most disempowered, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we're not expressing anger in a healthy way, I should say.
Right.
But I think that's one thing that we have to also be aware of, is that sometimes the grief, be it for any type of loss, be it the loss of a loved one, be it the loss of a job or whatever, any type of loss, it can often feel safe to go to the anger and stay in the anger. And so asking ourselves, what's underneath that, right? Because some of the other parts of grieving, the anxiety, the sadness, the despair, the fear, that doesn't feel as safe to go to and experience. So asking ourselves, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially because when you are expressing that outward anger, it puts other people at bay, so they're not coming too close, and they may not be able to see. You're putting it out there because, like, anger is a way to kind of protect me as well, right? So if it's a safe space, so I don't have to necessarily deal with those other emotions, but it's also a way to make sure that people aren't like probing me about those other emotions, or feeling like they have some type of control or some type of impact that you don't want them to have on you. So it's a way to kind of put up that wall when you express anger in a certain manner. And so it can be a very negative thing as far as like, what are you using it for? Is it to avoid all those things, which is not always negative, but it can be, or it can be a very positive thing if you're able to express it in an honest way and in a healthy way of like, this is a genuine feeling, and like you said, if you can identify what was that root feeling that led to that anger, right? You hurt my feelings and that pisses me off, like that happens,
right. And like you said, like what is that? What if you're staying there? Like, what is it that sense that is given to you? Like, and a lot of times it's like what you said. It's like, don't even try to hurt me because look, I'm big and I'm gonna know. So yeah. Well, oh my goodness, look at us. We're doing it right under 30 minutes. We're about to do our outro.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Follow us on social media.
How to stay in touch with us, Eboni.
You can follow us across social media at Melanin Mental Health, Melanin Health on Twitter. Check out melaninmentalhealth.com. If you are a dope therapist, make sure you sign up for the directory. If you are looking for a dope therapist, start there. And also check out our previous podcasts. We have a lot of information about mental health, about healing, about therapy. So if you haven't listened to some of the previous ones, check them out. We're definitely going to continue to inform the masses and try to make sure that people understand that therapy is dope, especially when you have a dope therapist. And I think that's all we got going on.
Yeah, get the merchandise. We got that merchandise that spreads the news, like to be able to promote mental health in a way that feels just like everyday stuff, right? Because that's one of the things. And so, all right.
And remember, I just want to say this is the last week for Pride, so Pride Month. So if you haven't bought your what is it? Therapy.
There's 3 different ones. There's Proud Ally.
I could not think of it. Proud Ally, Proud Therapist. I was like, Dope Ally? No, Proud Ally, Proud Therapist, The Heart. All of those are up there. So make sure you go and check those out. We'll be taking that down by the end of this month. So,
yep. All right. Thank you.